It was a night like any other for 26-year-old Sam, who was busy tending bar at his family's Italian restaurant in New York City. The year was 1985, and he was just another pretty face in the sea of beautiful people that populated the Big Apple. But when the men asked him to lead them to this person, something inside Sam snapped. He told them that if they didn't pay for their drinks, he was going to call the cops. And although he wanted to do the right thing and stand up to these guys, he couldn't help but feel a shiver go down his spine. He tried to keep his cool and tell them that he didn't care if they paid or not, but secretly he was terrified. At least he didn't think he did. Because years later, he was gone. Find himself face to face with one of those same men. And it was gone. Changed his life forever. It was one of the men from the group. He looked older now, but there was no mistaking that face. He knew that this man had a gun and he wasn't afraid to use it. But he also knew that he couldn't just ignore the situation. The man looked up and smiled. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the gun. But this time, he wasn't going to let fear get the better of him. It was the same gun he had shown Sam all those years ago, and it was still cold to the touch. And as he approached the bar, Sam's heart began to race. As they walked down the street, the man explained that he had been in prison for a long time, but he was just released. There was something else that this man wanted from him, but he wasn't quite sure what it was. He said that he had come to Sam's bar because he had heard that it was the best place in town. Sam was shocked. He had no idea what the man was talking about, and that was when one of the men reached into his pocket and pulled out a gun. It was cold to the touch and meant business. But the man wasn't buying it. He insisted that Sam knew more than he was letting on. Sam felt a surge of anger. He was tired of being threatened, and he wasn't going to let this man push him around anymore. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the gun once again. It was still cold to the touch, and Sam knew that this man wasn't afraid to use it. He couldn't believe that he had just fought off a dangerous criminal, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. And he wasn't going to leave until Sam told him what he wanted to know. He examined it carefully and noticed that it was a vintage Colt Python. It was worth a lot of money, and Sam knew that this man had probably paid handsomely for it. As the officer walked away, Sam let out a sigh of relief. Business was good, and he was happy with how far he'd come in life. He was standing in the doorway, and he was holding a gun. The man was taken aback, and Sam used that moment to push him away. Did you like this Mafia story? If you want to hear more stories like this, stay tuned. We'll catch you in the next one. The man raised the gun and aimed it at Sam. And that's when Sam realized that he was in for a night that he would never forget. The officer explained that there had been a disturbance in the area, and he wanted to see if everything was okay. He kept running until he reached the safety of his own home. He then ran as fast as he could, hoping to get away from this crazy man. But he never forgot about the day those men had come into his bar and threatened him with a gun. The man smiled again and said that he wanted to show Sam something. He stood up and motioned for Sam to follow him. The man turned around and faced Sam, and that's when he finally explained why he was really there. He asked Sam if he would be willing to let him search the house, and Sam agreed. He wasn't going to help these guys out, and that was final. He knew that the man who had threatened him was dangerous, and he was worried that the officer would find something that would connect him to the crime. So he poured them up some drinks, thanked them for coming in, and hoped that would be the end of it. Then he reached into his wallet and paid for the drinks. He even tipped generously and thanked Sam for the service. That is, until a couple of strange men sat down at his counter and asked for some advice. They were looking for someone, and they needed to know if Sam knew who they were asking for. Sam listened intently, and when the men explained what they wanted, he nodded his head slowly, confirming that he did indeed know the person they were asking for. But then the men got up to leave without paying, and Sam stopped them. Sam had never been threatened with a gun before, but then something unexpected happened. The man who had pulled out the gun lowered it and put it back in his pocket. Just like that, the men left, and Sam never saw them again. Years went by, and Sam eventually became the owner of the bar. One day he was working behind the bar when a familiar face walked through the door. The man ordered a drink, and as Sam poured it, he tried to ignore the feeling of dread that was creeping up on him. So he took a deep breath and asked the man if everything was okay. Sam felt a chill go down his spine, and he could unhelp but remember the fear he had felt the first time he had seen that gun. The man put the gun down on the bar, and Sam slowly reached out and picked it up. He handed the gun back to the man and asked him why he was showing it to him. Sam hesitated for a moment, but then he followed the man out of the bar. and he wanted to see for himself if it was true. But as they continued to walk, Sam could tell that there was more to this story. They walked in silence for a few minutes until they reached an alleyway. He told Sam that he knew something about a crime that had happened years ago, and he wanted Sam to help him find the person responsible. He had never seen this man before in his life, and he certainly didn't know anything about any crimes that had been committed. Sam tried to explain that he really didn't know anything, but the man wasn't having it. He told Sam that he had one last chance to cooperate, and if he didn't, he was going to regret it. He stepped forward and grabbed the man's gun. As he ran, he could hear the man yelling for him to stop, but he didn't. Once he was inside, he locked the door and leaned against it, trying to catch his breath. But then he heard a knock at the door. He opened it to see a police officer standing there. Sam lied and said that everything was fine. The officer could tell that something was wrong. As the officer searched, Sam couldn't help but wonder if he had made a mistake. But the officer didn't find anything, and after a few minutes he said that he was leaving. But then he heard a voice behind him. It was the man who had threatened him. It was the same gun that Sam had fought so hard to get away from, and Sam knew that he was in trouble. Mafia. The gun was cold, but the message was hot.